Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Coffee Chats with Coach Candy. Cheers. It is Tuesday after Memorial Day. Hope everybody is doing well. We had a little break yesterday, so welcome back, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, Terry. Good morning, Martha. Good morning, Yvette. How's everybody doing? Good morning, Deborah. Good morning, Jeff. Love seeing everybody jump on. Happy Tuesday. Good morning. Did everybody have a good weekend? I know we had a nice long holiday weekend. Good morning, Elaine. I'm so happy to see all of you. And I saw many of you are joining us on June 8th for the half-day workshop. So awesome. So excited to have you join us. Good morning, Cynthia. We'll get you in the group as well. For the rest of you that missed the Memorial Day special, there's still an opportunity to sign up. It's still discounted from the $97, but it has gone up by $20. So it is $67 if you're interested. Definitely get in there. We're going to have a blast a week from Saturday, getting you really clear on passion, purpose, and your mission. And so if you still want to join us, there are still some spots. We would love to have you. How's everybody doing this morning? How was your weekend? Did you guys have a good Memorial Day weekend? Do anything fun and exciting? Can't believe it's already Tuesday of the week and we're rocking and rolling. Also, I want to let you guys know I will not be doing a Facebook Live tomorrow or Thursday. I am heading out to Milwaukee here later today, and I'm doing a training at GE, which starts early tomorrow, and then I will actually be on a plane during our normal time on Thursday coming back. So I will be back on Friday, but we will have no Facebook Live tomorrow and Thursday. It's just not feasible unless I did one at 5 in the morning, which it would probably just be me and me. So wanted to let you guys know. We are going to start digging in. I know I mentioned last week around some of the noise. Went to see a great movie, The Biggest Little Farm. Oh, I haven't heard of that. I wonder what that's all about. Good morning, Renee. So glad to hear that you saw a good movie, though. So awesome. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, Christine. Well, we get a full house this morning. This is awesome. So today I want to start digging into some of the things around Destroy the Noise. I know I've had several of you reach out to me individually to talk about how to deal with self-worth issues or confidence issues, or being able to step forward and get rid of some of the chatter in the monkey mind. So I really want to get into some things that I teach around how to destroy the noise, and we're going to break this down into little bite-sized pieces each, Facebook Live among some other things. And so good morning, Texas. Amen, right? Spent time with friends. Love that. So this morning I want to start with, and for those of you that don't know, NOISE for me is an acronym. I created an acronym many years ago as I was looking at what are the components of noise. And one of them started from one of the chapters in my first book, which was Stop Shitting All Over Yourself. Which was the S. And I was like, and I thought about it one night. I was going to bed, and it was one of those where I'm like, okay, if the S is the shitting, which, by the way, if some of you think I say something different, same thing. You're burying yourselves in layers deep of the shooting or the shitting, whichever you want to call it. And so I was laying there, and I'm like, well, the end's got to be something. Sitting there in bed, and I'm like, okay, so negative self-talk and shitting, right? And I went to bed with it. It's amazing how when you go to bed with a question, the right question that's really aligned with how you're showing up and the work you're doing, that you get your answers. Your brain is a magical thing that your imagination really can tap in and get creative while you're sleeping, which is why I'm so adamant about what you fuel yourself with before you go to sleep. But it was interesting because I woke up at about 2:30, and I was like, oh my God, I got it. And so the noise, as I describe it, is the negative self-talk, filters, and frames. And I'm going to talk specifically around what that means. We're going to get into that piece today, and we're going to keep building on that because I train this, and I train this at a very in-depth level. But we're going to go through little pieces as we have conversations each morning. The O is the opinions of others you choose. And I'm very adamant about that word, choose to internalize. So it's all of the other people's opinions that you're taking in. Good morning, Sheena. The I is the inefficiencies you're creating in your daily activities. So it's all the ways that you procrastinate and say yes to things that aren't for you and jam up your calendar and don't have ownership of how you're running your day. And I say that that usually stems from two baby eyes. One is the inability to properly say yes and no to the things that serve you or don't. So you don't know how to say no effectively. The other one is you don't know how to properly qualify and dequalify opportunities and people. And it's amazing because even in corporate, when I work with a lot of my people that are seasoned sales professionals, they get taught how to qualify. Most people never get taught how to dequalify. And I will tell you that dequalifying opportunities and people is as critical, if not more critical. It's that opportunity that you got to get rid of what you don't need first before you can effectively say yes to things and open up space for that. So that's the I. And then the S, like I said, is the shoulding all over yourself. It's the I should. It's all of those beliefs and limiting, constructs that we put on ourselves based on things we've been taught in our culture by our parents, generational, or just things we have held on to that are stories that probably need to be released. And then the E is the excuses that we create and perpetuate, which usually come from one of four areas that I'm going to dig into more. And they're the fears that we carry. And it's the fear of being judged or criticized, the fear of failure, the fear of money, and the fear of, and failure, I would actually say, is more often a fear of success. And then there's the fear of rejection. And so we're going to start digging into that. Good morning. And let me just pause for a minute because I see that she jumped on. I want to give a huge shout out to Myra Slaba because I want to thank her so much for how she represented some of the fallen soldiers this weekend. And I want to say that, and I'm going to actually get misty-eyed. Some of you saw my post. I have a dear friend of mine from college who was a captain in the Marines, highly decorated captain, and was actually on his third tour, which was not even an assigned tour. He went over because he wanted to be on tour with his wife. And he went up for a test run, and there's some speculations about what happened, but his helicopter went down. And so I just want to say thank you, Myra, from the bottom of my heart for representing those fallen soldiers. She did a run yesterday where she actually, I'm so emotional about that. She actually dedicated space for every fallen soldier that we submitted. And so I saw on her arm, she had Captain Nate Doring's name on her arm as she ran that race. So just know that that means the world to me. And I just want to honor and thank you for honoring our soldiers and the sacrifices they've made for us in this country. Oh, that just really gets me. And I'm an Air Force brat, so I grew up a military kid. And so Myra, just know how much that deeply moved me. And thank you for that. So I'm already crying on a Tuesday morning. Woo! I did not expect to be that emotional, but that absolutely... yes, just need to shout that out and say thank you, Myra, because I truly, truly, deeply appreciate that. That was just a beautiful gesture and way to honor those who, for us, because he actually did yesterday mark his 13th anniversary. He passed away on Memorial Day weekend 13 years ago, and it was one of the most hauntingly beautiful and forever memories I will have is watching him get laid to rest in Arlington. He had a full service with taps and the 21 gun salute because of the way he was decorated. And I will never forget his 7-year-old son sitting and holding the flag. So just thank you. Thank you for that. That means everything. And yes, Christine, Dean Graciosi encourages everyone to make the what not to do list. It is so powerful. And oh, thank you so much. And yes, I hear the plane overhead. Mario, good morning. So back to our conversation. Myra, just so much love for you. I just cannot say thank you enough. That really meant everything. Back into talking about the noise. So today what I want to do is I want to really start to break down the negative self-talk filters and frames. Now, everybody gets self-talk. I don't think there's a human being alive that hasn't had a moment where they've been really self-deprecating and they've had a moment where they've just been absolutely cruel to themselves. It's amazing how cruel we are to ourselves, but if we ever heard someone else say things to another person, even a stranger, we would be mortified. And in fact, I love that Dove did a commercial a couple years back where they actually secretly recorded women getting ready in the mirror. And by the way, men, it is not just the women. You men have your self-deprecating ways of showing up in your own self-negative talk. But they were filming these women were getting ready in the morning, and the things that these women were saying were just horrible. They were talking about how fat they were, how ugly they were. They couldn't believe this, that. And when they went to go get their coffee later in the morning, what they had done is they had staged actresses to actually play out. So that one of the women was receiving and the other woman was saying the exact same words that those women had said to themselves. And most of the women interjected and said, "How dare you talk to her? You can't talk to her that way. That is just, who do you think you are?" And so then they ran the footage. Incredibly hard and brutal and demeaning to ourselves on so many levels. And we're going to get into that. We're really going to get into some things to help you rewire your own sense of self-worth, your own confidence. I know even in the last week, I have 2 friends staying with me who, wow, did we break through some stuff that I've been holding on to. And so some of you that really stay connected and watch what I'm doing, things are opening up to a whole nother level. There's been some things that I've been afraid to step into, and I've been really holding back. And so had some massive breakthroughs with my own self-deprecation and my own beliefs and my own stories. And like I've said a million times, I teach what I need to learn. So every time I'm peeling a layer back, I'm bringing it to you guys about as real time as I can. And Esmeralda is my negative voice. Yes, we all have that negative voice. And I encourage you, like Terry has done, maybe name your voice, because it's amazing when you can actually face that voice and have a conversation with that voice. You can take some of that energy and some of that language out so that you can be more intentional, because your words matter. Your words matter. And we're going to talk about one phrase in particular this morning. But I want you to think about, and it was interesting because at my Leaders Empowered Strong Summit last year, someone in the audience, one of the participants had asked, what's the difference between self-deprecation and humility? And it was interesting because at first that actually kind of tripped me up a little bit. We had a big discussion with the group, and when it came full circle, it was really around, and this is, and the more and more I've studied this and looked into this, I really believe this to my core. The difference between self-deprecation and humility is where you put yourself on the scale of self-worth. It's where you fall on the spectrum, because when you have zero self-worth, you're in a space where you're self-deprecating, you're shitting all over yourself, you're so harsh, you're mean. You're just debilitating. You're creating this debilitating space where humility is really owning your self-worth, and you're not in a space where you've got to like be validated, because when you need your ego validated, when you need to have someone else say you're worth something, you're more in that self-deprecation space. Humility says, I know who I am, and I don't have to toot the horn. I don't have to be out there, but I'm also going to receive and accept that I've been given certain gifts and that I can stand in those gifts. And when someone says, wow, thank you for showing up for me this way, you can simply say you're welcome. And you can simply say, it's my honor. Good morning, Pa. And so I want you to think about that. There is a spectrum of where we lie in that space of how we view ourselves, what we deem to be our own worth in that space. And so one of the phrases that we say that has become a cultural norm, especially in the US, and I would actually say in North America, because I have a lot of my Canadian friends that say it as well, and it's the phrase, I'm sorry. And I want you to think about how much that actually is creating a barrier in terms of how we get to show up and what that effectively means. And so I do a lot of work around this, especially with my corporate groups, because I want you to think about where and how you use I'm sorry. And I get there's times where people do that when someone has lost someone, or there's been a death or an accident. You say, I'm sorry. And truthfully, there's probably better things to say because you had nothing to do with that. So there's no ownership you need to take. And I want to get into semantics around what that language actually means in just a moment. But I want you to think about where you're kind of spewing out, I'm sorry. A lot of people start their sentences, and it's amazing. The more work I do in to this really quick, and you're going to hear it everywhere, and it's going to drive you nuts, is that people walk around going, I'm sorry, but they start sentences already putting themselves in a place to diminish their value and discredit who they are. Because think about the minute you say, I'm sorry, on a subconscious level, someone's like, okay. Because legitimately what you're saying, if you look at it from a linguistic standpoint, from an actual semantics, actual laying it out, when you say, I'm sorry, effectively what you're saying is, I am sorry. So think about that for just a minute. When sorry is in that context in a sentence, it becomes a state or condition. Think about anything else that you would qualify as sorry. So think about something like, ooh, that's a sorry state of affairs, or ooh, they're a sorry individual, or wow, that's a sorry piece of something. Is there ever a space, and I would love to be proven wrong on this, but I have yet to find it. Is there a space for when you say the word sorry? Because it's describing a state or condition. It's actually an adverb. It's not a, it's not a verb. It's a way to describe something. Is it ever positive? Is it ever in a space where you're like, ooh, I'm sorry, that's a sorry Saka, that's a sorry pizza? No. So think about the fact that when we say the word sorry, how we've defined it in our culture and what that usually means. So I want you to just think about that for a minute. When we say things like, I'm sorry, effectively on a subconscious level, we are starting to wire our belief around, well, I'm sorry, I'm not worth much. Well, I should just diminish my light. Well, I should just play small. Well, I'm going to hunch my shoulders down and get really kind of inside myself, because what happens is our subconscious starts to connect to that language, and it doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. It only knows what we tell it. So if we keep putting ourselves in a position to say, I'm sorry, I am sorry, I want you to think about what you're effectively doing for your own internal belief system, what you're doing to reinforce stories that probably don't serve you, and what you're doing to continue to diminish and shrink your light and your capacity to show up and serve. And so I want you to think about that. Effectively, what you're saying is, I am sorry. And I want you to really think, is there anywhere in my life where sorry is an uplifting, positive, joyful? It's kind of like when I tell people when they're like, oh, the outpouring of love, it's so overwhelming. Ooh, is that the word you want? Overwhelming is this really heavy anchoring word. I remember when I was first transitioning, and so I'm giving you the comparison. I was first transitioning and I had so many people that were supporting me, and I was like, I'm so overwhelmed with all of the love and the support, and I was like, ooh, I don't like how that feels. Overwhelmed to me is an overwhelmed. I know what overwhelmed feels like. It's one of the reasons I'm transitioning. I was burnt out. I was overwhelmed. I'm like, that's not the right word. And so I have now replaced overwhelm with the word overflowing. I'm overflowing with love. Do you see the energetic difference in that language from overwhelm to overflowing? Now I want you to think about the same thing from I am sorry to, if you really truly warrant stepping up and taking responsibility and owning your actions that are out of alignment, out of integrity with who you are, the better phrase is I apologize. Because as you hear that, and let's see, Yvette, because I want to ask you, what's different about I am sorry versus I apologize? And while I read some of the comments, I want you guys to weigh in. Yvette, I have done my best to ban that phrase from my vocabulary as much as possible, especially at work. I love that. I was taught the phrase I regret instead. Yes, and I want you to think about what's the difference between I regret or I apologize versus I am sorry. Think about that linguistically. What is the construct of the sentence that you've created? What's the difference between I regret, I apologize versus I am sorry? And so I want you guys to think about that and what's different between those two. It does not tumble easily, so I say it thoughtfully. Yes, that's the thing, because here's the other thing. We spew I'm sorry because we're not being present. It's our get out of jail free card. It's our I'm not going to show up full out. It's our, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm going to diminish myself because I don't want to take responsibility for that. And so when you understand that, you start to be more intentional and more purposeful. The problem is we're just vomiting and spewing words all the time, and we're not being thoughtful about how to show up. So I love that. Thank you for this deeper twist. Yeah, pretty low vibration state of being, huh? Absolutely. Sorry means to be in a poor or pitiful state or condition, or feeling regret or penitence. Now, yes, and I will say that's the way we've defined it. There are better words if you're going to take, because what's the difference between, good morning, Dina. What's the difference between I am sorry and I apologize or I regret my behavior? Because what happens, what changes the minute you say I apologize? Because as Mario says, is to be in a poor or pitiful state or condition, which means it's a state, it's a condition, versus I apologize is an action. It is a verb. It is an ownership. So that when you say I apologize, you put yourself in a space to say I take responsibility for, and I will find a way to adjust or fix or create a resolution. That's the word I couldn't think of. create a resolution for that, right? So there's an ownership to that. It's an action state versus I am diminishing who I am and qualifying myself by being self-deprecating and that space. So does that make sense for everybody? That space of I am sorry. And so from a linguistic, literal translation, I am sorry is that space that says I am putting myself in a sorry state, condition, pitiful. I'm diminishing my value. Even if you don't realize it on a subconscious level, someone hears that and now you've created a power play. Instead of showing up to say, you know what? I was out of alignment with who I am. I'm out of integrity. I own that. And I'm going to do whatever's required to mitigate that, to create a resolution and to show up differently. Because when you say I apologize, and also think about it when you start a sentence, because everybody's like, oh, I'm sorry, but think about the fact that when you show up and you say I apologize, first of all, you would not spew that out all the time, because people are saying I'm sorry for things they have no business saying they're sorry for. It's because they're afraid to show up. And so people will walk in the room, I'm sorry, I'm late, I'm sorry, and this. And they've already diminished themselves instead of saying thank you for your patience because I was running late this morning. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for, because I will tell you that highly successful people, executives, they don't walk in a room and say, I'm sorry, I was late. They say if they say that, they just insert themselves, or they say, thank you for your understanding. Let's get back to agenda. Because what happens is when you create that space of I'm sorry, you're already focusing that energy on you and you've diminished yourself in that space. And so when you show up and instead, and I always challenge people, every time you want to say I'm sorry, replace it with I apologize, and you'll stop saying it so much. Because as soon as you're like, you're like, I don't know if I apologize for that. I don't know if I take full responsibility for just went down. Wait, I meant to show up and be intentional about what I said. I meant to push that person and hold them accountable. I'm not sorry about that, because I'm going to give you some different language that's going to help you in that space. And yes, Christine, I am is the most powerful statement in the universe. And whatever we say it, we become. And people, absolutely, and for those of you, whether you're religious or not, even in the Bible, it says, I am that I am. The I am is everything. And so being more mindful around what we put behind the am, because on a subconscious level, on a spiritual level, we own that I am, whether we think we do or not. And if you want to wonder why sometimes you feel like you're not playing full out, or you don't feel like you have the worth, really check your I am statements and your I am not statements. And that includes, it's not just what comes out of your mouth, it's what you think, because your I am is everything. And it's why affirmations are only good when it's connected to the I ams that are meaningful for you. If you're just out there saying affirmations like I am powerful, I am amazing, and they're not your words, they're not your core values, it's just going to be a lot of lip service. It needs to be those things that you can emotionally, spiritually, mentally connect into. That's where affirmations and I am statements become really powerful, is when it is connected to your core values and belief and how you choose to show up, who you are currently and what you are becoming. And you can emotionally and spiritually and mentally connect into that, because words only have energy when we emotionally connect. And this is where we have created a culture where we have a deep embedded emotional connection around the word sorry. And so, yes, so saying I'm sorry is basically saying I'm pitiful. Pretty much. That's exactly what it's saying. If you think about it on a literal level, you are literally saying I am a pitiful sack of, I am not worthy of, you are more important than me. And you literally, every time you put I'm sorry in that space, you create a power play inadvertently where you make someone better than you. Instead of being on the same space and know that we are all of the same, we are creating a division and create this power play, and we're the ones shifting our power over in that moment. And so yes, that is essentially what you're saying. If you really think about it and get into it, and this is really the intentionality of how you choose to show up in your language and your words, they matter, because we've created emotional connections and definitions to words that trigger us on multiple levels. And when we understand that and take ownership of that, we show up differently. And so let's see, I had an intern at work several years ago who would constantly say I'm sorry when she made a mistake, then 5 times in a row, every time. I tried to get her to stop saying it, and I would work with her to learn what led to her mistake or error. Yes, because that's the other thing. And one of the reasons this is such a trigger for me, and then some of you know the story with my dad, who is just not a kind human being, very abusive, narcissistic. His phrase was always like, I'm sorry. And I got to a point, even at 8, 9, 10, I'm like, if you were so sorry, you would stop doing the same behavior. It's not your get out of jail free card. My God, just because you spew and I'm sorry, there's no responsibility in it. There's no ownership in it. And for me, I found that in our culture, we use that word like it's supposed to be our get out of jail free card. And I think that's such a cop out. We have created this space where it's the ultimate cop out, in my opinion. And like I said, that is a trigger for me that started way back when. And so when I think about that, I'm like, man, there is zero ownership in that word. It's like this, well, I'm sorry, and you're supposed to. I'm like, no, I want you to own it. I want you to get into it. And I want you to really stand in a space that says, I'm going to take action. Because if you truly apologize for something, then you're going to make sure you're learning that lesson and you're doing something differently. Before Mario, I've learned from someone else to always replace I'm sorry with thank you. Yes, that is one of the most powerful ways that you can shift I'm sorry. So that is one of the phrases. You can say things like, thank you for understanding. Thank you. I know I'm late. Thank you for your patience. Thank you. So thank you is a great replacement for I'm sorry. If it isn't, I apologize. Because I apologize is not always the replacement for you spewing I'm sorry. Because if it is not something that warrants you taking action and rectifying, or that's not really a word, owning and doing something about a thought and action of something you did, then there are better phrases, and one of them is thank you. And so Mario, absolutely, it's thank you for your understanding, thank you for your patience, thank you for allowing me to fall and have some room to stretch and expand. And so thank you is extremely powerful. Anytime you drop into gratitude, you automatically are shifting the vibration and the energy. So think about that too. If this is a really low energetic word, and ultimately on some level we're saying we're pitiful, we're just this worthless whatever, think about that automatically elevates and says, okay, I own, I know I'm here. And yes, I might have, but thank you for understanding. So thank you is really good. I apologize is another phrase if it warrants you taking ownership. Here's the one that gets me is when, say you say something to somebody, and I do my best to stand in a place to be very intentional. I also am someone who is here to help you step into your triggers and know that. And you will get somebody sometimes when you say something, when you're showing up and playing full out, that they automatically are having a reaction, right? And they're choosing, listen to my words, they're choosing to be offended in that moment. You didn't offend them. You can't offend anyone who's not giving you permission to do that. Just, we're going to talk about that in the O. But they're choosing something they're triggered on. They are choosing to be offended. Hear what I'm saying in that. What happens is too many times people will say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, stop that. Stop that nonsense, because if you are standing in integrity, if you are being intentional, if you are holding someone accountable, or if you are asking the bigger question and you are inviting them to show up with you, by all means, do not cop out and say, I'm sorry, simply because they're having a reaction. One of those other expressions you can say is, wow, I noticed something shifted when I said that. Help me understand what just happened. Help me understand what you heard. Help me understand what you're processing. Help me understand, because when you start to play into and participate in their energy, that's that spiraling, you are now actually effectively contributing to that trigger, and you're not putting the responsibility on them. What happens is that moment, and we're going to get into some of that even in terms of, and I think I mentioned this before, when people are reacting or grieving or having a moment where it's really hard for them, we want to fix it for them. We want to touch them. We want to engage. The best thing you can do for someone is to hold that space and let them feel into whatever they're being offended by, whatever they're being triggered by, and allow them to take responsibility or make a decision. Because remember, when a trigger shows up, you have 3 choices. You can cop out. You can say, nope, not playing in that space today, not for me, game over. Cop out. You can play victim. That is a choice. You can lean in and get curious and say, okay, I don't know where that's coming from, but that is really triggering me right now. And even to yourself, okay, help me understand, Candy, where's that coming from? And you can work that through with that person that wants to hold space with you. Or you can find that you're like, man, that used to be a trigger for me, but that just rolls off the back now. It doesn't even affect me because you've done your work through that space. When you are the person that says something that someone else is being triggered by, one of the quickest ways to diminish your power when you are standing in integrity and being intentional about how you show up and leading is to say, I'm sorry, versus one of two things: giving that person just space to feel in and say, you know, it looks like you need to work some things through. I'm going to give you some time. Let's get back together later and talk about this further. Or lean in because you want to be a person that holds space for them. But the minute you say, I'm sorry, you take the responsibility off them and you actually enable and create an entitled space because you are not having them take ownership of whatever they're going through. And so I hope that makes sense for everybody, because that's a really big opportunity and place that we don't play in. People are so afraid to be uncomfortable. And I think about Brene Brown talking about call to courage. When we choose not to have the conversation because it's uncomfortable, it's the very definition of privilege. It's very much, you cannot lead and not have the uncomfortable conversation. And when you cop out of the uncomfortable conversation because it gets uncomfortable, I've also sat and just held space. I've had somebody spin and they're like, well, I don't know how to answer that. I'm like, okay. And I'll sit and they'll be there 20 minutes and they're like, are we good? I'm like, no, I'm still waiting for your answer. Because I refuse to just go, oh, I'm sorry, that's okay, you don't have to. No. If I'm looking and leading and helping to hold that person accountable, then I have to be able to stand in that uncomfortable. And that means not caving in and spewing out the I'm sorry, because it gets really uncomfortable. And so leaders do not say I'm sorry. They own I apologize, they say thank you, and they say help me understand. And so I want you to understand that those three phrases are incredibly powerful in shifting that space. So let's see. Yes, like instead of I'm sorry for being late, say thank you for your patience. Absolutely. Boom. Brilliant. Oh, I love you guys. So that's what I want you to think about. I want you to really think about where and how. We're going to get more into language. This is just one example. This is one example of how our language is inadvertently shifting our responsibility to stand in our power in a more intentional way, in a way that's aligned with our core values and our integrity, in a way that actually serves. This is one of the reasons, in my opinion, we have created such a culture of entitlement, is because nobody's willing to have the tough conversations. And everybody's just in a space of, well, I don't want, it feels icky, it's uncomfortable, and we have a responsibility to stand in that space. And it's only when we hold people accountable that the conversation changes. And it starts with us owning where and how we're spewing the I'm sorry all over the place. And so really want you to think about that. This is one that I have done so much work on and keep working with people around. I mean, I get people that fight me on this. Well, you know, if somebody passes, then I'm going to say I'm sorry. There are better things to even say there, because there are people that actually get triggered that say, you didn't do anything. What are you sorry for? Simply say, my deepest condolences. My heart hurts for you. I'm sad for you. Again, it's naming the actual emotion. You're not sorry. You're sad. You're heartbroken for that person. You want to send them light, love, and prayers. You want to hold them in your heart. You have the deepest condolences for them and their family. Be mindful of, is what you're saying really reflecting what you're feeling and what you're trying to convey? Again, because we're uncomfortable, we say something, and in that space, most people are like, okay, I get it, it's fine. But think about, is that really conveying the depth of what you want to share with somebody? All I'm trying to do is challenge you to step into a space to truly own your emotions, to truly own your language, and be much more intentional about how you choose to show up and serve. Because effectively and ultimately, leadership is a choice. And it starts with you deciding but and shrink down and diminish your light, or do you want to stand up and say, I'm not sorry about anything. I know who I am. I'm going to stand in a place of humility where I know that I keep learning and I don't know much, and I'm going to keep stretching and expanding. And I'm going to be as intentional and as present and as purposeful as I can be. And when I do that, I'm going to hold a space for someone, but I'm not going to cop out simply because it's uncomfortable. And so I really want you to think about that. Holding a space for someone is very different than copping out because it's uncomfortable. And it requires you to be able to stand up and play full out and hold that space in integrity And no, does it warrant a thank you? Does it warrant a help me understand, or does it warrant a I apologize? And owning your thoughts and actions and what you say in that space. And so that's my soapbox for today. You bet. Oh, I never thought about that aspect when expressing condolences. Yeah, I mean, you didn't do anything. So to say you're sorry, and we've done that, and that's accepted. But there are people that are like, you didn't, that'll be their response. Like, but it wasn't your fault. What are you sorry for? Because think about that. What you are is you're sad. You're heartbroken. You wanna grieve with that person. You want them to know that you're available and you're there for them. Because that's a whole nother conversation, how we respond to people when they grieve. Most of the time we do what we need because we're uncomfortable. We don't take pause or care to ask what they need. We just show up with a damn casserole and think they want to be fed when maybe they need something different. And we're not allowing ourselves to just be still and just ask and just be present, because sometimes we don't need to say anything. We just need to say, I'm here. I've actually sat on the phone with some friends of mine for like 20 minutes in silence, where one or both of us will say, thank you for just holding space for me. Holding space is really powerful when you realize you don't have to have words. Sometimes holding space is just creating that heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul connection that just says, somebody's here with me, and that's all I need right now. What happens is we do what we need because we're uncomfortable. We're not thinking about the other person. And so truthfully, a lot of times when we show up for other people, we're actually being really selfish because it's what we need. It's not what the other person needs. And so I want you to think about that. I'm going to plant some of those seeds in there. Big conversation for a Tuesday morning to get us kicked back off in a week. And like I said, for some of you that were late, let's see, Christine, and then I got to jump. I got another call here. Yes, I've become very thoughtful about this. After our fire, I received over 500 comments. I read and responded to each one, and I could tell the ones that made no sense, were inauthentic, or people who made it about them. I learned so much about my own expressions. That's awesome. Girl, this was an awesome topic today. Awesome, thank you. Yes, and so for those of you that jumped on late, I will not be on Facebook Live tomorrow or Thursday. I'm doing a big training at GE tomorrow, and we actually start when I should be on here with all of you, and then I will be on a plane Thursday, so I will be back Friday. I might jump on just somewhere within tomorrow or Thursday if I can to get on, because I'm going to miss you guys not talking to you, but I will be back Friday. So this is a weird week. We've only got 2 days where I'm going to be Facebook Live with the holiday and with me traveling. But just know I love all of you. I love that you participate in these conversations. And again, these are just tools to help you continue to level up and to be more authentic and in alignment with your own integrity in terms of how you choose to show up and how you choose to serve. Because leadership is effectively a choice. And you have a choice every day as to whether you're going to be playing full out, whether you're going to be a leader in that capacity, or whether you're going to shrink down and diminish your life. So with that, it's all about you saying yes to yourself. Destroy the noise getting in your way. Myra, thank you again. Truly, 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 just thank you. And for all of you who are showing up, thank you. I love you. Make it a phenomenal Tuesday, and I will catch up with y'all on Friday. Bye.